Welcome to another Business Spotlight where we share reflections, pearls of wisdom, insight, advice from local business owners. My name is Ceri James. I'm a business coach and facilitator. And today on the Business Spotlight, we have business psychologist Matt Smeed. Great to have you here, Matt, and good morning to you.
Yeah, morning. Great to be here.
Let's get stuck in, if we may, please, Matt. Sisu Psychology. How long have you been in business? And tell us a bit more, please, about what you specialize in.
Yeah, sure. So where to start? So I launched, set up and founded Sisu Psychology about 6 years ago now. I think it was 6 years. I'm not very good with dates. Yeah, about 6 years ago. Probably this time of year, actually. I was working as a business psychologist before that on a consultancy basis, working in the world of workplace wellbeing. So that's what I'm interested in. I've worked with loads of different organizations, public sector, private sector, all around the world. But the one thing that connects those places, this is a bit corny, right? But it's people. And my firm belief that if those people are healthy and happy, have got good levels of well-being, if the organization's doing all they can to support that and not cause harm, then it's good for everyone, right? That's not just thinking and feeling good things, but it's also it's good for business. So that's what I did before I set up Sisu, and then it was very natural progression to start doing that myself. So 6 years ago, set up Sisu Psychology, which is all about that. It's how organizations can identify potential pressures for their workforce, create well-being strategies. I do coaching, I do training. It's anything that impacts on employee well-being, really, for the last 6 years. And yeah, it's been a great ride along the way, and currently work with a number of different organizations and have the model that we use is we use associates to deliver a fair bit of our work as well. So yeah, really enjoy it. Really enjoy what we do.
So what might be a typical organization that you'd like to work with or do work with as a kind of ideal client then, Matt?
That's a good question. So one answer would be anywhere that's got people. So essentially every business. And I have worked in like quite literally every industry you could possibly think of. Another answer might be an organization that actually cares about its people. And I know you might think, well, that's every organization, but I'm not sure it's every organization. I much prefer to work for organizations where there is a genuine buy-in for this sort of stuff from the top level down. The frustration, I guess, that I have experienced over the years, not just working for Sisu, but previously as well, was where perhaps an organization would say all the right things and we care about the well-being of our employees, and I would therefore work with them to create these strategies, give them some advice, and then they'd say, that's all great, but actually we're going to focus on productivity and performance first. Now, you and I know that those two things are inextricably linked, but they'll put well-being on the back burner and they'll just focus on performance. And then, surprise, surprise, probably a couple of years down the line, they'll say, why is everyone stressed out? Why is everyone burning up? We need well-being again, right? So ideal client would be a client that wants to take this stuff seriously, but also look at it strategically and systemically in the business and not just see it as, oh, we'll get Matt in to do a resilience session and put a sticking plaster over the problem. So yeah, there's the real answer, I guess.
Okay, so we're in early 2023, lockdown, a lot more hybrid working. How has that all impacted on the whole area of mental health, mental well-being, mental fitness, and how would it have affected your business, would you say, Matt?
Well, hugely, right? Again, where do you start with this? So personally, I would say that it's changed my job hugely in the sense that we do a lot more online. I was very fortunate that I am a bit of a techie. I'm a bit of a geek with data and all the rest of it. And we've got some online products. So actually, I was quite well set up to start delivering a number of the different services that we were doing at the time virtually. And I was already doing that. I was already designing and delivering virtual sessions, coaching, training, even the surveys that we do. Obviously that completely went online, right? Well, after the first couple of months where the entire business basically paused, after it came back and the slight bit of worry around that, it finally came back. it all came back online. And I don't know about yourself, but I've seen it creeping back in person. You know, I ran an in-person session on Friday afternoon. So we are seeing more face-to-face, but I'm not sure it will ever go back to the level that it was before. I used to do a huge amount of travel. I used to travel all over the country and abroad, and overnight stays in some nice places, some not so nice, not so nice places. But a lot of the work that I do far less travel now. And I was talking about this just before, I got offered some face-to-face workshops up in Scotland last week. They said, will you come and deliver these? And it was a 90-minute workshop. And I'm based in Manchester, near Manchester, and they wanted me to travel up to Glasgow. And I said no, because I said that's a long way to go for 90 minutes. And I would never have done that. I'd have never have done that before the world ended. So we're going to find, either they'll find someone who's more local to deliver it, or we'll find a way to deliver it virtually. So yeah, personally, it's changed hugely. In terms of the impact for businesses, again, I think the main difference has been just mental health, as you mentioned before, is just way up the agenda. You know, it's if there's one silver lining to be had from COVID and lockdowns and all the rest of it, I think that I don't know, maybe it's made us a bit more human. Like, we've seen into people's real lives, right? We've seen their dodgy curtains and their kids and their pets and all the rest of it. And you know, there were downsides to that, obviously, you know, lockdown and isolation for people. But I don't know whether it made us a bit more human. You know, we felt like we needed to connect to people. And actually now people are coming back into the office or finding new ways to connect virtually. Again, that's one of the challenges that impact directly on people's well-being, which is what I'm really interested in. So if that answers the question, yeah, lots.
Say I'm the finance director. You mentioned data. You mentioned some tools you use.
Mm-hmm.
And if I said to you, okay, how do we measure the impact on productivity? How do we measure the impact on absenteeism or other data you might use? You know, where is the ROI, and how are you going to demonstrate it to me, the finance director, in a potential client? How might you handle that, please, Matt?
Yeah, so ideally there'd be dashboard in it, right? So ideally, you know, so it's what tools are they using already to collect well-being related data, and organizations. The first thing I would say is that organizations probably have more well-being related data already than they're aware of. You know, so things like employee assistance program usage figures, you know, exit interviews, obviously your retention rates, your sickness absence rates, that in itself is well-being data. It will probably tell you something about what's going on within that organization. Now, the other question is whether you're collecting something specific to, for example, workplace pressures. And I'm a big advocate, and again, this is what we work on at Sisu, of treating psychological well-being like you would do physical health and safety. So the idea being that it's about identifying the things that could cause potential harm within the business, right? So if you were doing a physical health and safety assessment for a site, it shows you how much I know about physical health and safety, much less. You would go in and you would say, what could harm people? Are we going to have to go up the ladder? Are we going to have to handle the hazardous materials, whatever it may be? You would then say, what's the risk of that? And you put control measures in place. So your control measures might be, we need to avoid some of that. Do we need to go up the ladder in the first place? We need to mitigate against it. We need the proper training, PPE. Or maybe we need to respond to it. You know, we've got first aiders, you know, how are we helping people if there's been an accident? And they would meticulously measure accident rates, near misses, all these sorts of things, right? I'm on a mission to try and get organizations to think about psychological well-being in the same way. So what are the things that could cause potential harm or risk? And here I'm talking about workplace pressures. I'm talking about how pressured or concerned people are about, for example, work relationships, job overload, lack of control, how much they're paid, job security, all these sorts of factors. What is the risk for people? So how are they perceiving it within the workplace? And are you picking that up? Are you asking them? And there's different ways of doing that. And therefore, what are your potential control measures? But what you're doing there along the way, to get back to your original question, is you're collecting a huge amount of data about how the organization works in in a risk-based way, I think it's also worth looking at how we collect some of the positive data as well. But at the very least, you've got that risk-based data. And if you're dashboarding it effectively and you've got a strategy that sits underneath, you would be able to put that alongside your sickness absence levels, your retention figures, even performance-related outcomes, although I don't see as many organizations doing that. And that's where, and it would be a long-term process. I don't think I could go in and in 2 months prove, in a completely measurable way that this is your level of well-being and that's the ROI. I don't think I could do that for a business incredibly quickly, but over a period of time, if you were invested in it, you would start to see there was an obvious link between those things. We know it, right? How people think and feel in their well-being, it's bound to impact on the bottom line of a business. So it's just about proving it, to be perfectly honest. Yeah.
And how do you manage those boundaries with other aspects of well-being or other elements or other factors such as exercise, physical health, such as nutrition? How do this kind of scope of your services link into those other factors that impact on mental fitness?
Yeah, interesting. So I'm not an expert. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a physiologist. Although, when we're working with people around subjects like resilience and this sort of thing, psychological resilience, it's bound to come up. Because if you're talking about somebody's, I hate saying coping mechanisms, but, the strategies that they have that help them to deal with difficult times, for a lot of people, that will involve exercise, will involve or the lack of, if you look at it from the other side. But also just generally across organizations, it's good practice to get people up and moving regularly away from the desk and get some fresh air and actually go outside and this sort of thing. So, I'm not entirely sure about, the question, but I guess I'm not an expert in the subject. I would certainly, if somebody brought that to me and said that links directly to my psychological well-being, that would make perfect sense to me. And I would encourage them to do more or to continue what they're doing. But then it's maybe working alongside, nutritionists or whatever, if they wanted more detailed advice in those sorts of subjects. Yeah.
And so what about the challenges for Sisu Psychology now? What would you say are the main challenges for the business today?
Okay, right. So this kind of links to another business that I have. Okay, so not to confuse things, and I'll try and keep this quick. So I've run Sisu Psychology for 6 years now. Really enjoy it, still enjoy it. We work with some great organizations, it's going really well. I do have that frustration though, and this, I guess, is the challenge that... So 2 frustrations. Number 1, you're always on the outside looking in. So that's, I guess, the frustration of being a consultant, full stop, or, rather than being in-house. So there are times we've worked with organizations and I feel like we've made some really good progress, 3, 6, 9 months, and then the focus changes. And what happened to that? Did it keep going? I'm not too sure. I hope it did, but it's out of your hands, right? So I guess that's a challenge, trying to get these long-term strategic clients. More generally than that, and I would say that's why it links to this other business, is it really making a difference? Not just Sisu Psychology, every business psychology organization, every well-being, I should say, employee well-being organization. I think, we are all on our hearts are in the right place, and there's lots of evidence that suggests that the things that we are working with organizations to do can make a difference. However, I was stood on platforms 10 years ago hearing speakers from within large corporate organizations talk about well-being is on the cusp of being taken even more seriously, and it'll be on the top table, and this is an executive decision and all this sort of thing. I went to a conference about 6 months ago and they said the same thing. That sounds like quite a big cusp to me. It's like, when will it finally be taken as seriously as finance, for example, or how can we do that? So to keep this quick, we launched, it's called Working Well. So Working Well is a community, a virtual community-based business. And the purpose of Working Well is to connect, empower all of the amazing well-being leaders who are working internally within these organizations from around the globe. So we're primarily UK based at the moment, but why can't this be global? So the idea there is, I guess it was driven by that challenge, driven by that slight frustration. How do I can make a little bit of a difference here and a little bit of difference there, but how do I turn that into a tidal wave? And that's what I'm hoping Working Well will do. It's about empowering those individuals. And it's an industry in itself. There are hundreds of thousands of wellbeing leaders, wellbeing managers, mental health first aiders within these organizations. If we can equip, inspire, and empower those people, that can overcome that challenge. I hope. Okay. I'm convinced. I shouldn't say I hope. I'm convinced it can.
Okay, well, let's maybe come back to that. I'd just like to explore a little bit before we do them, if that's okay. Mm-hmm. 6 years in Sisu Psychology as the running the business. What would you say your main lessons? What advice would you give to yourself if you were starting day one now, knowing what you know now?
Yeah. Probably still need to take that advice now, 6 years. I'm thinking. So for people really starting out, I would say one part of it is the whole finance side, right? And you probably hear this a lot, but getting comfortable with the ebbs and flows of business. COVID was a perfect example of that. Going from a full, I was 3-4 years in by that point. So I feel like I'd gotten over that point of, worrying if you had a quiet month and therefore feeling like you needed to push it extra hard the month after. And therefore the irony isn't lost on me that would therefore impact my well-being. And I was trying to tell organizations about their well-being whilst working very long hours to even that out. And then COVID, 2 months of a full diary going to literally nothing in the space of 2 weeks. So that kind of brought all those feelings back. So I guess one thing would be, not to react to those things, to look at things more long term. So to look at things at least quarterly, if not longer than that, so it's not a month to month. Are we making what we think we should this month? And therefore, because if you're doing the right things and you're building the right relationships and you're filling the top of the funnel, then these things, again, touch wood, they work out in the end. So it's maybe just being a bit more, relaxed around that, I guess. And like I say, I'm a huge advocate of employee wellbeing. So self-care is in there. So making sure that, especially during those periods of, for example, financial worry, but it's not the only one because there's stuff going on at home as well, that you continue to invest in your own self-care. Because over the years, those periods where I've kind of strayed a little bit away from that, it becomes a negative self-fulfilling prophecy that then impacts you. And you have to have those moments where you think, wait a second, why am I doing this? Say no to a few things, because it's more important to get your head in the right place to be able to lead the business effectively, rather than getting a day rate for a one-off session, 5-hour drive from your house, for example. Yeah.
So having a mindset of looking for opportunities to develop your own resilience, right?
I think so. Yeah. Like I say, the irony, look, I'd be lying if I say I haven't stood in front of a group running a session on wellbeing and resilience feeling absolutely knackered, thinking I'm the wrong person to be running this. But no, I do take it very seriously. And actually, if you go back to the advice, maybe actually it would be about explicitly planning that in as part of running my business. I don't suppose I've thought that until now. That's one of the things I would encourage organizations to do. I would say, like I said before, you're managing psychological well-being like you're managing physical health and safety, like you're managing the finance, flow within the organization, and explicitly having a strategy around it. And I'm not sure I did that when I set out. I feel like I could do it a lot more now.
It's the roller coaster analogy, isn't it? And we never grow like that on the graph till we grow like that. Ups and downs, and drops, etc.
Getting used to that, right? It's getting used to that, I think. Whether or not that advice would be useful, because do you need to experience it to learn it? I don't know. Someone could tell you, could give you that piece of advice and you go, yeah, whatever. But I'm still just going to do it.
I guess
whether
awareness
I would heed
is the
it.
first step, isn't it? But maybe it's something you need to learn through experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Take your point. Well, it's been fascinating, Matt. One final question, if I may. Anybody who might be interested in joining your Working Well community, for example, what announcements or offers have you got in that direction, please?
Yeah, so Working Well is a great place to get in touch with us. So, so if you working well, so particularly if you've got an interest in workplace wellbeing, right? If you're working within an organization with responsibility for that, or if you're a consultant who helps organizations with wellbeing, Working Well is a great place to be. So the website is workingwell.community. So that's the website. You can find out more there. You can click. There's a free option, so you can join the community for free. It's also a very good time to join because we launched 5 or 6 weeks ago. So there are a lot of offers in there at the moment because obviously we're trying to build it. So now would be a good place to join. And the other one is Sisu Psychology. So Sisu, that's sisupsychology.co.uk. On there, a good first starter, actually. We've got a free, it's called the Spotlight on Wellbeing report. So it's a free report. So you can fill it in, fill in this questionnaire, which is all about your physical, psychological, social wellbeing. And you get a full report back with your personal details. Plus, we're not going to spam you. I promise. We're not like that. But it's, you get a really useful report back that tells you all about your own levels of well-being and how that links to your business as well. So that'd be a good place to go as well.
Excellent. All right, then, Matt. So from one spotlight to another, we will make sure we include those links in the narrative to go with these videos. Yeah. But it's been fascinating. Thanks ever so much for your time and your input, and all the very best with Sisu Psychology and with the wellbeing community.
No problem. Lovely speaking to you. Thanks very much.
All the best. Bye for now.
Cheers.